Why don't we take a look at a clip from this is Marshall McLuhan, Medium is the Massage, the little TV show, which I found, which I was very happy to find, to maybe talk about it.
How much do you make? Have you ever thought about suicide? You are fast losing your private identity. Information is being collected about you, and it's being recorded in a corporate memory, making up one big computerized gossip column. It is unforgiving, unforgettable. And so it goes, every minute of every day. You are the mass man, the collective story of all that ever happened. Walls of your rooms are coming down. It's becoming a simple matter to wire and pick out of your homes your private, once solely personal life and record it. Bugging is the new means for gathering information. Who knows? Maybe you've been bugged for sound. It couldn't happen. What's that buzz?
Well, really quite something. Again, that's 1967 or so, more than a half century ago. And, I think it points up a question, a very interesting question about McLuhan, and that is his politics. There's no doubt that we have many reactions to that little clip. We're amazed that it's 50 years old, and it seems so timely in terms of how it relates or how it reflects our own contemporary fears of being surveilled, of being tracked. They called it bugging back then. In a certain way, bugging is a very quaint thing where somebody puts a microphone in your lamp shade or something. Whereas we're being bugged all the time in the sense that we're being tracked. If we use a credit card, if we log into the internet, there's a metadata. It's all about metadata. In any case, it does bring up the question of McLuhan's politics. If we look at the medium as the massage, generally speaking, McLuhan is welcoming the electric age. He sees that things are changing in terms of how human beings understand themselves. And things are changing universally in human society. And he, generally speaking, doesn't seem to be unhappy about those changes. It being the 60s too, especially the late 60s, there are certain aspects, let's say, of youth culture that seem very promising in terms of their political effects. Now, there's a long history of since then, which may cast a certain, negative view of some of those things. But generally speaking, McLuhan seems to be welcoming this new electric age. On the other hand, you cannot fail to notice, looking at this show or reading the medium as a massage, that certain things that do puzzle him and frighten him. He says that the things is a very interesting thing. You got to remember, he's a middle-aged English teacher, English professor, academic, steeped in literature, the printed word. He's a scholar who has later in life, or sort of in midlife, become a kind of pop philosopher by concentrating on media, basically creating what we call media studies now. But it's quite clear that he has his fears, and one of them is the sort of very contemporary fear of ours of the way that digital technology is erasing what we consider to be our private lives. Certainly, those of you who use social media are, in a way, voluntarily doing that, blurring that line between the private and the public persona that you maintain. Even a person like me, an older person who doesn't use that, I noticed the other day, as I was reloading my SEPTA key card online, which is, I think, a wonderful system where you have a card, basically a credit card that you can put money on from home and travel around the city. It's all very convenient. But I noticed on the website under my account that there's a record of every trip that I've ever taken with that card. It went on for pages. Couldn't believe it. I mean, it was very boring reading because I'm always going to the same places. But there's a record of public transportation. I mean, McLuhan would have been very interested in such a thing in 1967. In 1967, you dropped a nickel in the bus, or you bought a token for the subway, but there wasn't a record of it. The books I bought on Amazon, the books I've taken out of the library, the movies and television shows I've watched on Netflix or Hulu, it's all there. And I doubt very much that anyone has any interest in it, but potentially, for anyone who did, for whatever crazy reason, it's all there. So the threat to traditional notions of privacy that McLuhan sees is the sort of the dark side of all this, right? And this dark side, frankly, will become more and more focus of the course as we read Amusing Ourselves to Death in the Shallows, which takes a much more negative, critical tone, these two works, of the effects of television and the internet on us. Really, what they see is, generally speaking, deleterious effects. Both Carr and especially Postman, they're followers of McLuhan, and Postman realizes he's totally indebted to McLuhan for his understanding of media. But he sees things in a much darker way than McLuhan did. Now, then it raises the question of, McLuhan was aware of these things. He was aware of the potential troubling effects of contemporary electric media. And we can ask ourselves why he chose not to take a sort of more negative, critical tone. That's interesting. I think that clearly he thought that the changes that were happening were inevitable and that you couldn't stop them anyway. But if you look in the particular page of The Medium is the Massage, where he talks about that these changes are not really inevitable as long as we're aware of them, and that may be the politics of McLuhan at the end of the day, is that his creation of media studies, a dialectical reflection on the changes that are happening in us and our society as a result of changes in media, that to be aware of them is certainly better than not to be aware of them. The changes perhaps are going to happen anyway. But there is a difference between sort of blindly sort of throwing ourselves into the new world and living in the new world with a grasp of what's going on. And perhaps that is his greatest contribution, is that he encouraged us all to be more aware, whatever these changes turn out to be. And sometimes McLuhan was wrong. There's no question about it. I mean, he was wrong about television in many ways. One of the things about television, he said it doesn't work as background. He said television demands involvement. You can't just put it on and have it in the background. That's clearly a mistake, and people have used the television for a very long time as sort of a background white noise, or sort of a thing to have on that they're not really involved in. So he got some things wrong, but he definitely got some things right too, obviously.